A dark silhouette stood on top of a mountain of corpses. The frightened guys said that he was preparing to attack again. The guy in front told the others to get ready to fight. The enemy raised his hand, shrouded in electricity, and said that God loves people, but still condemns sinners. The monster next to him exhaled smoke. The demon said that his name is Job, and he is the executor of God's will. Standing atop a mountain of skulls, he said that he would judge their sins according to the will of the gods. The dialogue box says, Skill, Demon King's Legion, can manipulate monsters, combining their consciousnesses for a cohesive fight. Increases the monster's strength. The enhancement depends on the level. Job told his monsters to attack, and they rushed to attack. Surrounded by various huge monsters, he said, let all the atheists with their sins go to hell. The guy screamed in fear that this monster could not be defeated. Another guy shouted that they were all going to die. They started to run away. But one man, dressed in armor with a blue cloak, did not run away. Stamping his foot, he said, don't retreat. Standing in a fighting stance with his sword, he said that there was no one else left. They were the last hope, and if they surrender, humanity would plunge into darkness. A guy with white hair, armed with a rusty rookie sword, said that they couldn't let them win. The demon looked at him with sinister red eyes. The guy was destroyed as soon as he approached the mountain of skulls. The guy in armor, lowering his head, said that everyone was wrong, but no one has the right to judge others. He said if they wanted to get rid of all the atheists, let him destroy sin itself. He gripped the hilt of the sword tightly with his hand. Putting the sword to his chest, the guy closed his eyes, shrouded in blue energy, and said, for the glory of the human race, I sacrifice my life. The guys exclaimed in amazement that this was sacrificial magic. A bright light emanating from the hero enveloped the dragon, and they said that the commander wanted to die along with this monster. The light became brighter, and they said, praise to the gods, glory is immortal. The demon, looking at this, asked about self-sacrifice. He said that it was very stupid of him to choose such a hackneyed way to die. He said that, unfortunately, even if he sacrificed himself, it would only delay their demise for a short time. He opened his mouth in amazement. The guys, raising their swords, shouted that the commander was right, and if they retreated, then everyone would die. And it was better to fight than to die in vain. Job shielded his hand from the blindingly bright light. He looked forward in amazement. The hero, surrounded by light, exploded with bright energy. The guy with white hair with a vacant look clenched his teeth. With wide eyes and a frown, he said that the useless worm who used such pitiful methods must die. Pointing his finger forward, he ordered his monsters to tear them to shreds. 3 guys stood in front of them, and silence hung between them, broken only by the barking of a dog. The guy with dark hair said that this fool has gone crazy again. The guy with the mohawk said that calling a stray dog for help is something special. Their leader, irritably flexing his fists, ordered them not to chat, but to beat him up. There was a fight between them. Lying on the asphalt, Job asked what happened, where his monsters were, and where his monsters were. The dog began to urinate on his leg, and he cursed and pulled his leg back. Frowning, he looked down. Looking in amazement at the reflection of his face in the puddle, he asked who it was. He said it looked good. He remembered the guy with the rusty sword. Frowning, Job wondered if this was not the newcomer who died. The voice said that today the beta testing phase of the Dimensional Extermination Matrix game has officially ended, and dungeons are now appearing in cities around the world. Job thoughtfully said that the beta testing phase of the game ended today. Standing among the neon signs on a dark street, he asked if perhaps he had been reborn in another body. Clutching his head, the main character cursed and said that they really used vile methods, but the worst thing was that he ended up in this useless body. After petting the dog, he asked with a smile, so what? 7 years ago, around this time, the game Dimensional Extermination Matrix invaded reality. Gates began to appear all over the world with monsters from the game, constantly infiltrating the earth and leading to chaos and disaster. Monsters went on a rampage in the burning city. But at the same time, talents that originally existed in the game began to appear randomly among players. These people are called Awakened. They formed guilds and entered the dungeons in an attempt to stop these disasters. People fled into the portal on the roof of the building. As with gaming addiction, the Awakened quickly became immersed in fighting, treasure hunting, and leveling up, as well as killing monsters to become richer and acquire high-level equipment. At the same time, Job fought alone. He asked who said that an awakened one could only level up in dungeons. He controls monsters, from the weakest to the strongest, using them to get rid of others, gaining experience and equipment for development, slowly dominating the world. The greatest boss. The main character said that he was like this before those players killed him and he had to be reborn. closing his eyes, he smiled and said that he would use his 7 years of gaming experience to have fun with newcomers. He bit his finger hard enough to make it leak. He extended his finger, dripping blood, to the dog. Job said, blushing slightly, that he could easily get rid of 80% of the players with his monster control talent. Red energy from his hand enveloped the dog, and he said, calling him his first servant, to go with him, taste his blood and serve him. The dog froze, rolling his eyes upward, making strange sounds. She vomited, and the main character asked what happened. The system reported the activation of the genuine love system. The main character asked in shock what it was, because there was nothing like this in his past life. The Mongol felt genuine love for the main character, who was petrified from shock. The monsters flew in the air over the city, and Job shouted that he wanted to be obeyed, not drooled. Job has said in the past that if you time it right, in his past life he was learning how to invade the game's dungeons. In front of him was a dialogue box, coming soon, personality change dungeon. He said, if he's not mistaken, there will soon be a dungeon in the lower places where you can change your identity. He hovered over the city. The monster in front of him growled loudly, its mouth opening wide. The main character said that then for the first time he was able to consciously talk to the Guardian. Smirking, he said that if he found his body, maybe he could use his consciousness to become himself again. Snapping his fingers, he said that this meant that he could finally get rid of this useless body and become demons again. Raising the dog above his head, the main character, laughing, joyfully said that he was a genius and a born villain. The system was undergoing an authorization process under the name Job. The dialogue box turned red and the system said that no player named Job was found. The main character's ID has changed from Demon King Job to newcomer Jiang Yuan. Jiang Yuan, cursing angrily, asked the system how dare it say that such a famous name does not exist. The system responded irritably that he should respect the system, and since he was reborn, the world has changed. There is no Job anymore, only Jiang Yuan. Gritting his teeth, the protagonist clenched his fist angrily. Looking at the dialogue box, his eyes widened in amazement. Grinning, he said that he thought he looked familiar, but it seemed to be really him. The dialogue box says, Jiang Yuan, 19 years old, assassin, no level, associated guild, Holy Fire Guild. He said that he did not think that this weak newcomer would join the guild, and its commander would be the one who was responsible for his death. Remembering how the previous owner of the body rushed into battle, he grinned and said that it was not surprising that he was the first to sacrifice himself. He said that this meant that by using his personality, he would not only be able to manipulate the new recruits, but also get closer to the commander. Looking at the guy with dark hair, Yada, the main character, said that it was time to settle the score. Lifting his face, he said that when he starts ruling the guild, all the subordinates will be just toys in his hands. Walking among the slums at night, Jiang Yuan said that he didn't expect that he would be so inexperienced and poor, and if it weren't for the guild emblem, he wouldn't even bother with this place. He walked down a corridor full of garbage. Covering his nose with his hand, the main character thought that it stinks here. There was a noise around the corner in front of him. Frowning, he opened his eyes and wondered if this was danger. The guy told his boss that the boy was in room 109 on this floor. A guy with blonde hair and a bare torso with 2 axes on his back told them to turn everything here upside down and look under every stone. The main character, looking at them, thought that for the first time he simply saw a person and immediately sensed a threat. This is difficult to get used to. Frowning his brows, he thought that it seemed that they had come for him, that is, for this newcomer, and if he had nothing to do, he would definitely have fun with them. Patting the dog on the head, he said that since he was now his follower, it was time to test his loyalty. He kicked the dog around the corner. The dog ran along the corridor. The guys ran after the dog. The guy exclaimed that it was his dog. Another guy asked why he was running slower than the creature. The guy with the blonde hair told him to stop talking nonsense, and they're using that dog against him. The main character came out from around the corner. He grinned smugly. The main character opened the box. There were 2 badges in the box. Picking up the silver badge, he looked at it in amazement. He said that this is the title of a fugitive, and the fact that he is being hunted is not surprising. He said that this can influence the opponent and cause them to underestimate the forces, and in the game such people are considered enemies of the people. Looking around, he thought that the strong who get this title become the best killers, while the weak are only able to do small things. And it seems that he had to work hard to survive. Looking in the mirror, Jiang Yuan said that this title of fugitive could be useful so that the guild would not pay attention to him. Someone appeared behind him and said that he had found him. The guy with blonde hair folded his arms over his chest and said that he fooled him last time in the dungeon and he wouldn't trust him again. He told him to return the spoils that he had stolen. After tossing the badge, the main character said that he was not interested in the loot. After catching the badge, he said with a grin that anyone who raised their voice at him was destined to die. The guy swung an axe covered in electricity. Raising his palm, Jiang Yuan asked if he thought he could handle such a small axe. His pupils shrank and he thought that he had forgotten that he could not use his old skills. He stepped back. The axe flew past him and stuck into the wall. The guy with a big smile told him to stop wasting his time and just die, because he was just a useless killer. The main character happily remembered that he is now a killer. He took a dagger in his hand. Then he jumped into attack. The guy, swinging his axe, asked if he wanted to try to fight. Running past him, Jiang Yuan thought that only a madman would do such a thing, and he leaves. Hearing the scream, he froze. A crowd of guys, chasing the dog, shouted to the boss that they were here. The main character exclaimed in shock that there were even more of them. He turned to the window. Jumping out the window, he said that he did not have time to play with them, and he was leaving. Looking at the purple portal, he asked why a new dungeon had to appear now. Together with their pursuers, they fell into the portal. Jiang Yuan landed with a grin on the other side of the portal. A huge monster, like a worm, towered behind him. Turning around, the main character thought that it was a high-level monster, and it seemed like they were in trouble. Violet energy gathered in the monster's mouth. Beams of purple energy shot out around the monster, and the boys ran away in fear. Standing among them, the main character grinned and said that this worm used to be one of his weakest followers, and let this be a lesson for them. The impact on the ground nearly knocked him off his feet and he cursed. A giant worm appeared from under the ground in front of him. It began to shoot purple energy, and the main character, running away, asked if he had always been so strong. He said he didn't notice it. A beam of purple energy incinerated a guy nearby. Jiang Yuan thought that because of his rank, even the dungeon monsters didn't notice him. He thought why he was not happy, and it was even somehow disappointing. Throwing up his hands, he said that he had better return to the guild and deal with what really matters. The monster, meanwhile, was destroying people behind his back. Noticing something, the main character opened his mouth. The girl with the spear dodged the energy beam. The main character thought that this man looked familiar. He wondered if he had met her before. The girl had white hair and blue eyes. The main character thought that this seemed to be the previous player's girlfriend. He wondered how he got such a cutie while being so weak. He thought that beauty was not cancelled even in this world full of power. Picking his ear, he said that it was not his concern. After all, this was the girlfriend of the old player, so it did not concern him. The girl landed on the ground. The monster opened its gigantic mouth wide above her. Jiang Yuan, running from the spot, thought that he almost forgot that he had unlocked the genuine love system. A giant worm hit the ground. The main character jumped to the side, holding the girl in his arms. He thought that there was no better way to get genuine love than saving a lady in distress. With a wink, he apologized with a smile for the delay. The girl responded by hitting him in the face. She brushed off her shoulders, and the main character irritably asked what happened, because he was just trying to help. The girl jumped into the attack, holding a spear shrouded in energy. She swung her spear. The girl landed gracefully and the monster fell to the ground. The main character, a newcomer who failed to become a hero, applauded the girl, an expert who did not need to be saved. She said with hostility on her face that there was no place for losers in their family. She told him to die playing with her dog in this low-level dungeon. Jiang Yuan asked about being a loser. He said that she had no idea about his real powers. Raising an eyebrow, he noticed what she said about family and said that she was not the old player's girlfriend, but his little sister, and it seemed like they weren't on the best of terms. The shabby guys said that he led them to a dungeon of this level. As they approached Jiang Yuan sitting on the ground, they said that their group almost died because of him. They suggested not to talk and to kill him. They surrounded him, and the main character said that he had nowhere to run. The guy raised the axe, and the main character frowned. Someone waved pink energy, striking down the people around him. The main character looked at the guys who had fallen around him. The spear twisted several times in the air. The girl caught the spear with a hand with black nails. She stood on a rock, illuminated by the sun shining through the clouds. Rising to his feet, Jiang Yuan said that he thought she had left. The girl said that it looks like someone is not as useless as before. She said that she only saved him because she saw how bravely he fought, nothing more. Turning around, she closed her eyes and said with a smile that they were even. The main character, stopping her, asked irritably when he became useless. Clutching his head, he burned with anger and shouted that before everyone and everything had knelt before him. The dialogue box says, "Congratulations on receiving your sister's genuine love. Unlocked Kenai." Jiang Yuan asked where genuine love was found, because she clearly speaks with disdain. The system reported, when the Vigilant Eye is activated, it shows the abilities of the opponent and his rank. The brighter the color, the stronger and more powerful the enemy. While sipping, the main character said, "Every cloud has a silver lining, and this ability is excellent. No worse than his sublime eye from his past life." He decided to test it. Clasping his hands, shrouded in red energy, in front of his face, he thought, "Watchful eye." Opening his eyes, he activated the skill. Looking at the corpses of people and monsters in front of him, he said that with this ability, and the title of a fugitive, the battle with his main enemy is not far off. Someone appeared over the worm's corpse. A guy with black hair walked forward, enveloped in a bright light. Jiang Yuan, covering his face with his hand, asked what it was, because he was almost blind. The guy with red eyes, wearing black clothes, had an SSS rank. The main character, recognizing him as Yada, happily said that he was on time. He thought, because he used this pathetic trick in my previous life. Gritting his teeth, he said that if he did not take revenge, it would tarnish his name. He walked towards him, clenching his fists. Grabbing him by the collar, he said that they had finally met. In Yada's eyes, the protagonist said with pitiful eyes that they had finally met. Patting him on the head, he said with a smile that the brother and sister had coped well with the sudden danger in the dungeon. He said that he remembers him correctly. His sister's name is Zhongru, but he doesn't remember him. The main character said upset that his name was Jiang Yuan. He narrowed his eyes at him and thought that he would soon find out his true identity. People were going to the stone fortress, and Yada said that the gate should have appeared a month later. But for some reason, all the dungeons that have been forming lately have some kind of anomaly. Sitting at a table full of people, he said that all union members would need to stay in touch and would need to help each other to avoid any incidents. The main character, grinning, asked if they thought this would help them on Judgment Day, when everyone would be in danger. He said it was naive. A glass of water broke, falling to the floor. The man, his heavily reddened eyes bulging, his tongue sticking out, grabbed his throat and called for help. Yada, jumping up from his seat, asked what was happening. Jiang Yuan stood behind him, put a knife to his throat and asked him to let him present his creation. He said with an evil smile that he, unfortunately, would not be part of his grandiose becoming a demon. He snapped his fingers. The heads of people around them exploded with colorful fireworks. Placing his hand on his face, the main character laughed evilly. He continued to laugh maniacally. The man asked if this guy had gone crazy after leaving the high-level dungeon for the first time. The rookie fugitive blushed, fidgeting in embarrassment. Yada frowned and said that according to the information, a new dungeon would appear in 3 days and they needed to be ready to fight. Jiang Yuan folded his arms and thought that this man knew how to pretend to be indifferent, and he hated such calm and collected people. He thought that he was the main character and he needed to find a way to get rid of this loser. Looking at Yada, peeking around the corner, the main character, holding a knife in his hand, said that he was alone and this was his chance to kill him. As soon as he jumped out of the corner, a red light flashed on the wall. Several turrets were pointed at him, and he raised his hands, smiled awkwardly and apologized, saying that he was lost. Toilet. Yada stood in the toilet stall. His eyes met Jiang Yuan, standing on the toilet in the next stall, and he, looking away, said that he was very afraid of dirt and did not want to sit down. Sitting on the branch of the tree under which Yada lay, he thought that if he had his skills, he would not have to embarrass himself so much, and he would definitely cope with him. He jumped from the tree, and someone shouted to the commander that the dungeon had appeared earlier. He fell to the ground and the guy said that the dungeon monster was a kitsune. Yada asked if he was following him. The main character, sweating nervously, hid the knife behind his back. He cleared his throat. Getting into a pose, he said that he was actually following him because he respected him very much and wanted to follow him to the dungeon. Yada waved it off and said that he had already told him that his level was insufficient, and if he entered such a dungeon, not only would he not be able to defend himself, but he would also slow them down. The main character said that it seemed like the commander was looking down on him. He asked why he thought he would slow them down. Yada said that he needed his sister's help in the insect dungeon, and anyone would say that he couldn't handle a higher level dungeon. Jiang Yuan asked that the commander's experience, skills, and talent are probably in a critical state right now, and if you look at the entire guild, there are no players who have reached S level, let alone high-level dungeon monsters. Yada asked how he knew about this, since it was secret information of the guild. The main character said that even if his level is not high, he has the ability to identify any living creature. With a wink, he said that as a commander, he should know that he can give a lot to the guild with such a skill. He thought furiously that he was actually the Demon King. He couldn't believe that he was communicating with the enemy like this, and anyone who saw him like this should die immediately. The main character thought that Kitsune is the first top-level monster he met in his past life, and he knows how dangerous anomalies are. Remembering how he stood on the head of a giant monster, he thought that with his experience, he could not believe that he could not defeat it. People walked among raging volcanoes and flows of boiling lava. Jiang Yuan, pointing his finger up, said that the tool shows that Kitsune has already been to the mouth of that volcano many times, and when it appears, he can determine its level and skills. Yada turned around, raised his fist and told the others to keep up, remember to act quickly, and not overdo it. Smirking, the main character thought that when the monster appears, the volcano will erupt, and those who dare to anger him will die in fire. He thought that this was what a sinister, cunning and stubborn demon king should do. Having fallen behind the group, he hid behind a stone. Jiang Yuan, sitting behind the stone, said that he would just sit here and wait patiently for the Kitsune, and then start becoming a demon again. Lava was erupting from the volcano, and he noticed an animal nearby. Many Kitsunes surrounded him and he asked in amazement what was going on. The others were also surrounded by a lot of Kitsune, and the guy, gritting his teeth, said that there were too many of them here. Peeking out from behind the stone, the main character asked why it was so different from what it was before. Saying that there were many foxes here, he asked which of them he had tamed. Purple energy sparkled around the Kitsune sitting on his head. It increased in size several times, baring its teeth surrounded by purple energy. The monster jumped into the attack, opening its mouth wide. Yada furrowed his brows as he stood in front of Kitsune. Raising his sword, he ran 2 fingers over it and said, "Water will turn into ice, fire into gold. Holy light formation into attack." Blue energy surrounded the people behind him and rushed upward in a column. A stream of blue energy was in front of the monster's face. Yada charged and blue energy shot out at his opponent. The spike, sparkling with purple energy, flew through the air and pierced the ground in front of him. Kitsune swung his tail, showering his opponents with a shower of spikes. The spikes in the ground emitted pink smoke. The main character exclaimed that the situation is completely different from what it was before, because he has not even improved it yet, and it is already in its final form. Raising his hand, Yada told everyone not to panic and stay in line. Pink hearts surrounded the Kitsune. One of the hearts entered the guy's chest. Blushing, the guy grabbed his chest. The guy's clothes flew into the air, and the main character said that they were all enchanted and were unable to maintain formation and continue the attack. Smiling widely, he quietly whispered that although she had changed a little, her personality remained the same. Yada asked if he could recognize her abilities and characteristics. He told him to quickly tell them what to do with all this. Jiang Yuan activated his watchful eye. Above the fox in front of them was the inscription, SS+. Ice Kitsune, Adult. Feature, mixed mental and physical attacks. Skills, white feathers, attacks, ignoring physical defense and reducing the target's mobility. Charming look, shoots hearts. When hit, removes the enemy's clothes and lowers body temperature to negative. Can be used in conjunction with other skills. Permafrost field, area of effect attack. The white feather turns into a silver needle and rushes through like a hurricane, forming an absolute frost field. Frowning, the main character thought that, in comparison with his previous life, the abilities of this Kitsune had increased, and her charm skill had completely immobilized everyone. He jumped behind a rock and Yada asked what he was doing. Jiang Yuan said that they can't handle her because she ignores any physical defense and even attacks, so if they don't retreat now, they will freeze to death. Yada looked at him. Closing his eyes, he said that the system showed that this dungeon was only an intermediate level, and he did not expect to meet such a dangerous monster here. Frowning his brows, he opened his eyes and said that if they continued to fight like this, the losses would be even greater, so they would still have to retreat. Enveloped in blue energy, he began to run and ordered them to leave. Pushing off from the ground, he jumped into the air. He activated his shield of holy light and was enveloped in a blue magical barrier. Kitsune shot magic hearts. Her magic was blocked by a magical barrier. Someone standing behind him laughed. The woman asked with a smile if he really wanted to undress everyone. She was a woman with long blonde hair, wearing revealing black clothing. Kitsune looked at her with loving eyes. Yada and the naked guys opened their mouths in shock. Yada asked the main character what he was doing. Jiang Yuan asked, "Isn't it obvious?" He said that he was seducing the beast because it took off all their clothes, which means she was driven by lust. He thought that if he had not learned about this in his previous life, he would have thought he had gone crazy. Pointing his finger at his chest, he said that he would use his own weapon on the enemy and sacrifice himself. Tossing his hair, he said that he would first use his beauty to attract the attention of this fox, and then he would find a way to deal with it. Yada looked at him in bewilderment and disgust. The main character stamped his foot. As he struck a pose, he winked and thought in disgust that not only did he have to deal with his past enemy, but he also had to, dying of embarrassment, dress up as a woman. He thought that the antagonist was becoming more and more humiliated. Kitsune immediately ran towards him and he jumped into the air. A sphere of blue energy appeared in Yada's hand and he shouted, "Now." He used refined holy light and a column of blue energy appeared in front of him. The main character said that this is his favorite animal. He told him not to even think about it, because he could not become the mascot of the Union. He threw away the wig and women's clothing. He then fell to the ground next to Yada. He tripped him. Yada lost his balance and fell. A cloud of dust cleared around the kitsune. The monster, enveloped in energy, opened its mouth in anger. Yada calmly looked at the monster, and the main character opened his mouth. Yada covered him with himself from the monster's attack. He asked if he was okay. Straightening up, he said that he had done a lot. He told him to leave, he would figure it out on his own. The dialogue box in front of the main character said, "Congratulations, the teleportation skill has been unlocked. You can move to any location nearby for 10 minutes per day." Smiling, he said, "Just in time." Stopping Yada, he said that he could handle it himself. While putting on the wig, he thought that no one has the right to steal what belongs to him. The monster in front of him struck with a huge paw. Jiang Yuan dodged it by quickly jumping to the side. Kitsune swung his tail and the main character jumped up. He began to run along the tail of the monster, shrouded in purple energy. Kitsune shot a magic heart and he dodged it with a somersault. He landed on his feet. The main character was reflected in the kitsune's eyes. He stood on the monster's face. He dripped blood from his finger. Fragments of memories of their acquaintance from a past life flashed before the monsters. Jiang Yuan thought that this was the only beast on his path to becoming a demon that could relieve his boredom, and it was not for them, beginners, to touch it. A small kitsune glowed in his hands. The naked guy called out to Yada and pointed his finger at him. The main character looked down in confusion. The guy asked what was going on and didn't he defeat that fox. Another guy asked him what he was doing. Yada, approaching the stone behind which he was sitting, asked how he was feeling. The main character said that everything is fine. Yada asked what happened to the beast. The guy asked if he was going to take it for himself. Another guy said that they defeated it together and this is the merit of the alliance. Jiang Yuan smiled awkwardly. Closing his eyes, he said that she had taken on human form. In his arms was a girl with pink hair, who had closed her eyes with long eyelashes and was sleeping. She slowly opened her eyes, smiling. The main character thought that she recognized him. Looking at his status window, he exclaimed that his experience points were increasing. The girl stood on the ground. He thought that, as a beginner, he was destined to go through the usual path of elevation. Patting her head, Jiang Yuan thought that fortunately they didn't kill the kitsune, although it would be nice to strengthen her with the gift of blood like in the previous life. But at least he can save her for his own needs. Remembering the giant worm, he thought that judging by the current situation, the plot was completely different from what happened in the past. Remembering the fight in Kitsune, he thought that what remained unchanged was that he could meet his former comrades. Remembering Jiangru, he thought that he could improve his personal skills and use the knowledge of the world to collect magical monsters. He thought that, judging by how quickly his experience was accumulating, it would not be long before he would not have to carry the rank of beginner, and he would reach level of the guy loudly asked how a beginner could become stronger so quickly. Pointing his finger at him, he asked if maybe she just wanted to take the opportunity to enter the human world. The guy with the axe said that it was too dangerous because the guild had paid a huge price to destroy all the monsters that invaded their world, so they couldn't let it happen again. People surrounded the main character, and someone suggested killing her now before she recovered. Someone else shouted at the main character to stop standing and do something. Yada, putting his hand on the guy's shoulder, told everyone to calm down. He asked the main character what was the matter. Jiang Yuan told Kitsune not to be afraid, because they would not touch her. He said that the ice kitsune had evolved into its final form and was tamed by him. He said that the crisis in the dungeon had been resolved and they could return. Yada told him to wait. He said that he never told him how he tamed her. Frowning, the main character thought that he needed to come up with something. He grinned. He said that, as he said earlier, he can recognize the energy signature of any living being. The kitsune's weak point is in the forehead, and thanks to him, the captain, diverting her attention, he had the opportunity. The guy told the captain not to believe him because it was too suspicious. Another guy said that his level and strength are so low that it is simply impossible to get close to such a monster, let alone tame it. Another guy said that he usually fools around with cats and dogs, but this time he insisted on a high-level dungeon, and there must be some ulterior motive. Yada told the protagonist that he didn't care what exactly he did, but according to the rules, she needed to be sent to the Guild Federation. The guys with the knives told the main character to give it to them. Jiang Yuan thought that these guys were more annoying than any fly. He asked with a smile what if he said no. The guy said that the code clearly states that anyone can kill a monster in a dungeon for the sake of experience and equipment. The other guy said, since he doesn't want to do it in a good way, he will do it in a bad way. Pointing his finger at them, the main character said that he remembers that there is a clause in the code that states that other guild members cannot be deprived of their loot. He asked that now that the dungeon monster was left without strength, they were immediately ready to rush into battle. Yada told him to let him handle it because they could talk it out. Turning around, Kitsune hissed at his hand. The main character forcefully removed his hand. He asked what kind of guild it was that didn't follow its own code. He asked if it wasn't because it was enough to meet such a high-level monster, so they were eager to kill her in order to increase their level and get equipment. Turning around, he said they were leaving. Someone blocked their way. 2 people blocked his way, taking a fighting stance, and they said that no one would leave, because she was not allowed to leave the dungeon and go out into the human world. The main character instantly moved behind them. Turning around, he said with an arrogant grin that they couldn't stop him. Shrouded in blue energy, Yada appeared behind him. Swinging his sword, he landed on the ground. The main character, holding a kitsune in his hands, ended up behind him. Frowning, he thought he was very fast. Turning around, Yada said that until the extent of the kitsune's danger was determined, they could not allow her to leave here, and he would take care of it. Kitsune bared her teeth in the protagonist's hands. The system said, "Congratulations, the level of the genuine love system has been increased by 4. The skill module is unlocked, visible only to the user and can be reused an unlimited number of times." Jiang Yuan exclaimed happily that the system collected values not only from players, but also from monsters, which was just in time since he no longer had to worry about how to get out of here. He launched the skills module. He said that this guy's guild ranks 3rd among all guilds, so it's not worth messing with them again. And besides, the enemy has a numerical advantage, so this is the only way out. He activated the crystal feathers and Yada covered his face with his hand. The main character and Kitsune were floating in the air, standing back to back. Several Kitsune were running on the ground, and he thought that in human form, this skill had turned into a group attack. The main character and Kitsune were running among small animals, and he thought that he should just take advantage of their desperate situation and escape. The system reported that Instant Flash was activated. Jiang Yuan quickly moved forward, striking his opponents. Yada was approaching Kitsune, who had purple energy in her hand. The main character turned around sharply. The small animals grabbed Yada's legs. Stuck in place, he wondered why he suddenly became so much stronger. Since he was level E, Jiang Yuan picked up the Kitsune. Several animals, gathered in a ball, hit the guy in the chest. They climbed onto the other guy's head. Having dropped Yada to the ground, they jumped on it. He said irritably, "Hunting formation, priest attack skill, heavy wound effect." Turning around, the main character told him to play honestly. The staff stuck into the ground. Behind the 4 people with staffs, a column of purple energy shot into the sky. A wave of purple energy pushed away the main character, Kitsune, and the animals. They fell to the ground. Gritting his teeth, Jiang Yuan thought that there were too many of them, and in group attacks they simply had no equal. He turned his attention to the magicians with staffs. Wiping his face, he thought about the fundamental formation. The main character quickly ran towards the column of energy. He did a somersault in the air and jumped forward. The guy looked at him in amazement. The main character hit one of the guys in the face. The guy flew far to the side. Turning his attention to the guy, the main character swung his fist. Frowning and squinting, he turned around. Yada struck with his sword, and the main character dodged it by jumping to the side. Jiang Yuan gritted his teeth and thought that this didn't seem to end well. Yada frowned in concentration. He swung his sword, shrouded in blue energy. A whirlwind of blue energy shot forward. Covering his face with his hands, the main character, squinting, thought that now he was no match for him. Looking at the Kitsune, he thought that the flash time would soon expire, and he needed to come up with something quickly. He covered it with himself. Jiang Yuan and Yada stood opposite each other. Yada asked him if he didn't have enough problems. The main character replied that it was not he who created the problems, because they started everything. With his arms outstretched, he asked if this was according to the rules of their guild. He said that he would take care of the monster and then he would take care of him. Yada looked back at him silently. The guy shouted that he was openly going against the guild, and they couldn't let him go. Another guy asked how he dare provoke them when he himself is at a disadvantage. Raising his fist, Yada told them to stop arguing. He told the main character that after the invasion, the guild either kills the monster or sends it back to the dungeon. Closing his eyes, he said that he could take her from here, but first they needed to check her security level, and before making sure that she was harmless, she needed to be monitored 24 hours a day. Smirking, Jong Yun said that he had been waiting for him to say this, and he himself would watch over her. Kitsune, looking at him from behind, thought that he wanted to take her away from here. Clouds floated across the blue sky above the stone fortress. Kitsune raised her head and said that this was strange. She asked what it was. She was wearing a helmet with cables. The system reported the completion of the test. Ranky, the main character, said that this is why he was able to defeat her, because the Kitsune level dropped from SS+ to E after the transformation. He asked what happened, because it was strange. Yada said that it looks like she can only control SS+ rank abilities in animal form, which is very good. At least it will save them from this guy's boasting. The guys laughed and said that a newbie eats a newbie, and the dungeon monster, which was originally incredibly strong, dropped to the lowest rank after following this noob. The main character asked with a smile if they could go. He thought that he was too lazy to argue with them, and they would definitely get theirs. Yada, stopping him, said that now it was his turn. Jiang Yuan asked what was the point of checking his rank since he was just a beginner. The system reported that the check was completed. Ranky Kitsune happily thought that she and her owner had the same rank. Waving his hand, Yada said to take her to the logistics room. He thought that his rank had not increased, but the way he performed in the dungeon was not at all like he. The main character thought that this commotion was finally over, and now he could calmly continue with his plan. Assistant Ding Cheng asked Yada what's next. Yada said that recently there have been more and more monsters turning into people, so he will have to keep an eye on her and Jiang Yuan. He told him if anything strange happened to report to him immediately. Ding Cheng nodded his head and obeyed. Dungeon Registry, the girl said. Binjiang District, Jianghan Street, Level D Instance, No. 2673. She asked if he was sure he wanted to go there alone. The main character asked with a grin if it looked like he was joking. He said that he was now the most famous newcomer in the guild and no one was going to team up with him. He discovered a new talent, the self-deprecation of a beginner. The guy said that this low-rank fool decided to send to the D-rank dungeon alone. The other guy said that he doesn't even know how cruel and scary this instance 2673 is. The hooded guy said that a lot of D-rank people died there, and now many people are afraid of this place. Kitsune, frowning, asked the main character why these people are always so nasty. Jiang Yuan told her to simply ignore them, because their ignorance would only bring them despair. Turning around, he said with a sly smile that only he knew that this specimen contained 2673. The girl, raising her finger, asked what equipment and props he needed. She said that since he was alone, they would give him a couple more first aid kits. The main character said that he doesn't need anything but wine. The girl asked in amazement if he was going there on vacation. The main character said that then he would exchange all the points from the last dungeon for wine. The dialogue box says he has 2469 points. He figured he'd just think of it as a cool trip to see old friends. Jiang Yuan and Kitsune found themselves in front of the entrance to dungeon 2673, shrouded in blue energy. Three guys called out to Kitsune and asked him why she was going around with this pathetic, unfortunate loser. He called her to his awakened rank. The main character activated the Eye of Insight. In front of him was Xiao, the captain of the Dark Legion, rank A. Behind him were two guys of C+ and D+ rank. The main character thought why these people are here, because dungeon 2673 is level D. Xiao told Kitsune to join him, because he will help her upgrade quickly. Jiang Yuan squinted his eyes and thought that he had a lot to do and didn't want to waste time talking to them. He activated his instant flash skill and the Kitsune disappeared in front of the guy. The main character grabbed the guys by the head, arm, and leg. Soon they were lying in a heap on the ground. He led Kitsune along, taking her hand. Standing in front of the portal, Jiang Yuan said that this dungeon has many undercurrents and strong winds that randomly transport players to different areas. He told Kitsune to be careful and not get lost. They entered the portal. There were many whirlwinds above the ground. Kitsune was lying on the ground. Rising up, she saw the main character nearby. Rubbing her eyes, she asked what was there. Frowning, the main character said that it seemed they were late. The ground in front of them was littered with bloody corpses, and he said that there was a bloodbath here. People ran through the grass, killing small birds they encountered along the way. The guy raised his head up. The bird's paws lifted him off the ground, and he dropped the spear. Lightning flashed, and a huge white bird, flapping its wings, threw him aside. The health of the little birds was restored. Nervous sweat ran down the bird's forehead. Steel chains shrouded and blue energy flashed through the air. The chains grabbed the bird by the neck and paws. The wind swayed the grass. Kitsune, standing next to the main character, asked why they were being attacked, since these wild monsters are not capable of fighting at all. The main character said that no matter how weak they are still prey, and someone, using a group attack technique, kills everyone and drains the experience from them. Lowering her eyes, Kitsune said that they were very pathetic. Jiang Yuan looked at her in amazement. Raising his head up, he thoughtfully spoke about the sounds. A strong gust of wind blew. The strength of the shield surrounding the bird was 19%. People shot magic at it. Senior Zio, folding his arms across his chest, displeasedly hurried the others and said that they had already wasted a lot of time on this D-level dungeon. Something moved in the grass. The main character, looking out of the grass, said that he understood who made those sounds. Kitsune asked if she knew it. Jiang Yuan said that this is a wind phoenix, the second most important beast for him. And once he was accidentally poisoned with an earth-type poison, then he fled to this dungeon, where this particular creature healed him. He said that he was bullied by many because his combat power was close to zero, and he, in turn, strengthened him into the only healing monster with combat attributes. He remembered how a huge white phoenix sat on his hand. Activating the Eye of Insight, he said that the levels of these guys are higher than that of the dungeon, and the experience they gain here will not be enough for them. He said it was strange that they were still here. The main character said that they would not think about it for now, because first they need to return the Wind Phoenix. Opening the skill panel, he thought that they were stronger and there were more of them, and they could not act rashly. Zio gripped the spear tightly in his hand. Taking a swing, he said that he still had a dozen dungeons left. Noticing something, he turned around in amazement. The ground under their feet was covered with ice, freezing their legs. The main character jumped out of the grass. Standing next to the Kitsune, shrouded in a purple aura, he struck a pose and apologized, saying that he needed this beast. Zio asked where he came from and whether he dared to go against the Dark Legion. Placing his hand on his forehead, Jiang Yuan closed his eyes and said that it doesn't matter who he is. Leaping into the attack, he gritted his teeth and said that the important thing was that they would not take anything away from him. The guys opened their mouths in amazement. The main character took the sword out of its sheath. Having cut the chains with his sword, he said, "Especially what belongs to me." Zio said that his equipment is maximum level D. He asked if he was a newbie who didn't know the rules. Smirking, he said that he would teach him a lesson. The guild code stipulates that no player can interfere in the unfinished battles of other guilds in the dungeons in order to take away what was captured. He told him to leave here if he could even think a little. Jiang Yuan, leaning on his sword, said with a grin that since he was talking about it, he was wondering if there was a rule that one should not go too far. He asked how it was that they, C and rank players, looked into the D-level dungeon and caused a massacre here. With his nose in the air, he asked if they simply wanted to weaken the power of the other guilds, leaving their low-level players without experience. Zio exclaimed angrily, and a vein bulged on his forehead. Throwing the spear, the guy asked how a noob like him dares to tell the Dark Legion what to do. The spear pierced the ice-covered ground next to Zio. The guy with the scar, landing next to him, told him not to waste his nerves on this guy, because he was just a newbie who didn't know his place. He said that they would teach him a lesson so that he would understand how to behave. The main character thought that after Kitsune turned into a human, her level dropped, and with her current skills he would not be able to defeat them. He thought that he needed to come up with something quickly. Ding Cheng, watching from behind a tree, grinned and said that, as always, he stood out and brought a monster to the guild. He said that was good, but they would see if he had lost his mind. Zio rushed to the attack with a spear. He smiled widely as he stabbed his spear. He told him to die and the protagonist blocked the attack with his sword. He told Kitsune to be careful. Kitsune nodded and obeyed. The second guy hit his spear behind the main character, and the Kitsune, surrounded by purple energy, ran away to the side. The guy with the scar was shrouded in blue energy. The two of them lunged with a spear, and Jiang Yuan staggered back. The main character grabbed their spears with his hands. Gritting his teeth, he thought that their level was much higher than his, and their equipment was at least several times better. His legs shook under their pressure. The guys in front of him grinned wickedly. They waved their spears, and the main character stepped back. Zio asked if he didn't realize that all his flimsy tricks were as ostentatious as his face. Jumping into the attack, they shouted to him to die. Their pressure pressed Jiang Yuan's back against the tree. Turning around, Kitsune called out to him. Wiping the blood from his mouth, the main character thought that he had been experiencing pain for a long time. He said that in his previous life, all of his battles were overwhelming and ended instantly, and it was very boring. but the pain he just felt seemed to reignite his thirst for battle. Running quickly forward, he threw one of the opponents into the air. Zio asked how this noob could be so fast. Turning around, Jiang Yuan asked with a grin if he still seemed ostentatious to them. Raising his sword, he told them not to overestimate themselves, because it was too early to make any decisions. He thought that even if his opponent's levels were higher than him, with the instant flash skill, in close combat he had a speed advantage of 6 times. Zio blocked his attack and the protagonist thought how he could be faster than him. Frowning, he thought that he himself had slowed down. He remembered a dialogue box that said that the teleportation skill had been unlocked, with which he could move to any location nearby for 10 minutes a day. He then remembered how he used the instant flash skill. Jiang Yuan thought, when he first entered the dungeon, he immediately used it, and now the skill is recharging. The guy swung his spear at him from behind, and the main character turned around. The guy jumped, swinging his spear, shrouded in blue energy, to attack. The main character frowned. A stream of blue energy knocked his opponents off their feet. Zio, landing on his feet, asked who it was. Yada's red eyes sparkled in the cloud of dust. Jiang Yuan turned around and thought, as expected from someone who injured him in his previous life, he has good foresight of danger. Yada asked how he was feeling. The main character replied that, as far as he could see, he was alive. Pointing his sword forward, Yada said that they had committed a serious violation of the Allied Guild Code by carrying out a massacre in a low-level dungeon. He said he was ordering them to stop immediately and follow him. Zio said that this guy seems to be from the Holy Fire Guild, their sworn enemies. The guy told him not to panic, because he was alone and couldn't do anything. Zio agreed and said that the awakened Zio families never feared anyone. They used a combined gold and silver spear technique. A dragon made of golden energy rushed forward. Raising the sword in front of his face, Yada said, "Holy Sword, Third Sword Kai." Swinging his sword, he cut the dragon, and it disappeared into thin air. Blue energy hit the guys. They were pushed back, but stayed on their feet. Zio cursed and shouted to attack everyone together. There were several people in front of Yada, shrouded in a blue aura. The main character thought that a group of D-rank awakened were fighting against C-rank. He wondered if they had no idea what they were doing. He thought that it looked like he wouldn't be of any help in this battle. As he left, he took the kitsune with him and thought that this guy knew how to attract everyone's attention, attracting everyone's attention wherever he went. As he approached the chained phoenix, he thought that this meant that for now he could safely go pick up his pet. Someone blocked their way. The axe guy and the sword guy told him not to even think about taking their loot. Opening the dialogue box, Jiang Yuan told Kitsune to use the charming glance skill. Kitsune, surrounded by magical hearts, used a charming look. They quickly ran forward. Kitsune hit the guy with her knee. The main character pushed the guy away with his fist. Approaching the bird, he raised his sword. He cut the chains that bound the animal. After petting the phoenix, he said that everything was fine and he was safe. The bird's eyes turned red with anger. Raising its head, surrounded by purple energy, the phoenix let out a loud cry. Jiang Yuan said that this was bad, and the wind phoenix became furious. Kitsune, frowning, ran forward. The phoenix, opening its beak, struck with a magical impulse. Wind Phoenix, level D++, young, feature, wind, healing. Skills, sound wave, attacks by creating a tornado vortex from the air, dealing area damage. Wind Sphere, forms an air barrier that protects against physical attacks and spells. The main character, grabbing the kitsune, jumped to the side. The tornado swirled around Yada and the people he was fighting. The guys could hardly stand on their feet against a strong gust of wind. Looking at the phoenix, Jiang Yuan said that it had always been very obedient and never attacked other creatures, but now it must have been very angry. Frowning, he said that he needed to be calmed down quickly, otherwise no one would get out of here alive. He ran his finger along the blade of the sword. Running to the phoenix, the main character thought, in a past life he was his most obedient beast, and let him be like that in this one. He pushed off the ground. He jumped on the bird, raising his hand. Phoenix turned around and he exclaimed that he had noticed him. Phoenix used Wind Sphere, a skill that creates a spherical air barrier that traps the opponent. Healing State, locks in blood and essence, restoring all vital functions of life forms within the barrier. Swinging his sword, Jiang Yuan said that his weak sword was not able to penetrate this sphere at all. The magic sphere around him turned purple and he said that it was shrinking. He asked if he would be crushed into mush. Yada turned around quickly and Kitsune called out to him. Trembling, the protagonist clenched his teeth. Smiling awkwardly, he told the bird to look, because he had brought him something tasty. In his hand was a green bottle. He said that although he didn't know him, they used to be good friends and fought side by side. He said that he knew that he was not at all what he showed himself to be. Otherwise he would not have come here to talk to him about the old days. The main character opened the bottle cap. A sparkle appeared in the phoenix's eyes. The sphere around Jiang Yuan shattered into fragments. A thread of red energy surrounded him and the phoenix. He sank to the ground. The main character's level went up from E to D. The dialogue boxes say, the beast is subdued. The experience value increases by 500 points. Items received, bow and arrows with pointed tips. Accessories received, dimensional ring, storage in which you can store pets, equipment, consumables, and much more. Looking at the ring, Jiang Yuan said that with this joke, it would be easier for him to carry a huge number of items with him. Smiling, he said that he had endured all this for so long, and he needed to rest, so he would give him wine. The Xiao brothers said that they wouldn't let it go so easily, and the Holy Fire Guild would regret it. Yada asked Ding Cheng why he didn't inform him that someone was entering the low-level dungeons en masse. Ding Cheng scratched his head and apologized and said that he didn't know about it. They just froze everyone in the Dark Legion, and he didn't think it was like that. Looking at them, the main character thought that, it turns out, this guy sent someone to follow him, and it is not surprising that the rescue did not trigger the system of genuine love. He wondered if he thought he was suspicious. Turning around, he thought that it didn't matter and he needed to get out of here as quickly as possible. Yada, calling out to him, told him to wait. He said that he didn't expect that he knew so much about Dungeon 2673. He asked where he got the information that the local beasts could be tamed with wine. Squinting his eyes, he asked if he was hiding something from him. The main character grinned, furrowing his brows. Several people came out of the portal, who told Yada that they heard that they were fighting the Dark Legion and came to help. Yada, standing with a sword pointed at the main character, said that everything was fine, there was just one small problem. Kitsune looked at him with hostility and he told the protagonist that the most important thing now was to explain himself. He said that he could see the data of the beasts, but this did not explain that he knew more than the others about the Windy Phoenix, because he even took the wine in advance. Recalling how Jiang Yuan fought with the Xiao brothers, Ding Cheng rubbed his chin and said that Senior Xiao is a ranked, and he would not be able to resist him for so long, so his strength is definitely not E-ranked. He said there were too many opponents and a normal player would have been surrounded and killed almost instantly. The main character, grinning, said that he did not expect that he would be followed, and he was careless. Yada added that he had previously shown that he can turn monsters into humanoid ones, so there is too much suspicion. The guy asked if this guy was a monster himself. Another guy agreed and said that he joined the guild very early. The first guy said that his recent performance was also very suspicious. Blue energy enveloped the sword, and Yada told the protagonist that he was giving him one last chance to explain himself. Surrounded by armed men, Jiang Yuan thought that one of the top guilds with an S-rank player was ready to fight against him alone. He thought that he felt as if he had been a demon king in a previous life. Smiling, he thought that in his current state as a novice, there was no way he could win. But the demon king stood out for more than just his strength. Placing his hand on the Kitsune's shoulder, he told her to move away. The main character said that, as expected, nothing could be hidden from the captain. He said that his rank had now been upgraded to D. The guy asked how this was possible and if he was actually upgraded. Another guy asked how he achieved it so quickly, since it is very difficult to increase the rank. Another guy said he really was a monster. Closing his eyes, Jiang Yuan said that he was a beginner, but in this world, everyone has their own talents and skills. He said, for example, a captain proficient in the Holy War skill S-rank. Patting Kitsune on the head, he said that there are also newbies like him who only know how to view data and have small pets. He stepped forward, taking a fighting stance with his sword. The main character asked, since he is so strong, if he dares to fight a noob like him without using any skills. Yada exclaimed in amazement. The guy asked if he was completely stupid for challenging the captain. They said that the captain still had S-rank strength even if he didn't use skills, and the difference in attributes and levels could just destroy this rookie in an instant. The main character said that he will win. He will tell him everything he really wants to know. He asked if he agreed. Yada, closing his eyes, said, if this solves the problem. The main character stood opposite him. Yada swung his sword sharply in front of his face. The blade flew right in front of his face. The main character swung his blade in response. They crossed their blades. Yada looked at him in amazement. Jiang Yuan thought that as expected from an S-rank. He thought that his arm must be broken if he continued to block his blows. Swinging his blade, he thought that in this fight he was going to rely only on the sword. One of the observers asked if he was cheating, because this noob repelled the captain's attack. Raising his sword, the main character rushed to attack, and someone exclaimed that this was a very intense battle. They crossed swords again. Yada said that his strength is at the E rank level. Jiang Yuan asked if he thought that novices couldn't be that capable. Smirking, he said that he admitted that his refined holy light skill was indeed very powerful. He said that here his fencing skill, which he had honed so hard, was useless. It was an absolute lie. Yada opened his eyes in amazement. The main character said that strong people like him, who also have good attributes in addition, have no equal. He said that he sweats every day, works out, plays sports, but it's just no use. He got used to the role and told even more shameless lies. Yada asked if he wanted to say that he developed all his abilities himself. Gritting his teeth, Jiang Yuan said that he had been collecting day and night, constantly analyzing and obtaining new information. As an E-rank rookie, he had endured countless hardships. Jumping into the attack, he asked if he did this so that he would end up being considered a monster. Yada, blocking the attack, said in confusion that this was not what he meant. The spectators said sadly that they had been wrong to suspect him. Smiling, the main character thought that this was a victory. He asked if in the eyes of them, people with strong skills, human efforts were really so useless. He thought that the demon's most powerful weapon was suggestion. 3 days later, Holy Fire Guild headquarters. Kitsune, smilingly handing a piece of apple, told the main character to eat. Jiang Yuan asked the doctor what was there and if he was alive. The doctor said that he had multiple fractures throughout his body, muscle rupture, intracranial hemorrhage, massive damage to internal organs, and, according to the diagnosis, he could already prepare for a funeral. Liang Ming, male, 26 years old, medic of the Holy Fire Guild. Yada apologized and said that he should have restrained himself. Liang Ming said that it was a miracle that he dueled with an S-rank captain and was not cut into pieces. Scratching the back of his head, the main character, laughing, said that this was nothing. Liang Ming said that no one praises him. He said that the only reason he is still alive is because of the Windy Phoenix who healed him with her skill. He said that thanks to him, many of the fatal wounds on his body are gradually healing. The protagonist petted the bird and Liang Ming asked if it was because he eats a lot. Jiang Yuan said that he was just recuperating. Smiling, Liang Ming said that if he did not get involved in any trouble, he could fully recover in a few days. Yada, turning around, said that now that he is sure that nothing threatens his life, he is calm. Smiling, the main character thanked him for his concern and thought that now that he treats him like this, he doesn't have to worry about suspicions. Standing in front of the door, Yada said that there was one more thing. He said that everyone in the guild admires his spirit and willpower. In the fruit basket there were many notes wishing him a speedy recovery. Yada said that although taming monsters is a rare skill, it is not forbidden. He told him next time to call someone from the guild for help instead of acting on his own. He closed the door behind him. The main character, with a dissatisfied expression on his face, asked why this fool was constantly clinging to him, and also warned him not to walk alone. Looking at the bird in his palm, he said that he had successfully completed this mission, and the medical skills of the Wind Phoenix were not in vain. He added that this buff is also an incredible find for any newbie. Wind of Healing, B. A medical grade buff that prevents the damaged target from naturally deteriorating and allows for slow, but steady regeneration. Duration, permanent until dissipated. Notes, the spring breeze revives the trees and grass, and time heals the wounds of the past. Source, Wind Phoenix. Jiang Yuan asked why his level didn't change since it didn't happen when he tamed the Kitsune. Looking at the dialogue box, he said that there is no Wind Phoenix in the genuine love system. Looking at the bird, he asked if he still doubted him as his owner. Throwing at Kitsune, he told her to raise a good one and tell him why she was loyal to him. Kitsune raised her index finger and said, because the owner is very good looking. Whether it be an innocent look in a woman's dress or a shy expression on his face in half-unbuttoned clothes. The main character stopped her by covering her mouth with his hand. Having taped her mouth, he lay down on the bed and thought that subduing a demon was not the same as getting a heart. He thought that this was true, after all. He did not turn Zhongru's sister into a pet. He thought that in his previous life, the Wind Phoenix was loyal to him because of the power he gave him when the people killed his twin monster Fire Phoenix. And now he not only did not give him the power, but also weakened him to such an extent that he suppresses his. He thought about maybe drawing him a card, talking about dreams or something like that. Jiang Yuan said that he needs to strive for more and not look at what he has now, because when he becomes a devil again, he will be in charge. Looking up, he wondered if he had returned 7 years, and did this mean that the Fire Phoenix had not yet been attacked by the Awakened Ones? Lifting the bird by its wings, he wondered if this meant that in order to get the heart of the Windy Phoenix, he needed to save his wife. Remembering the Fire Phoenix, the main character thought that, unlike the windy one, which, due to its medical purpose, is a D-rank monster. The Fire Phoenix has an A rank, and the Kishin Purgatory dungeon in which it is located cannot be dealt with by itself. He thought, if he goes along with the Holy Fire, then this captain will never allow him to take an A-rank monster for himself, and he doesn't want to fight with it anymore. Getting out of bed, he put on his slippers. Looking out the window, taking off his bandages, Jiang Yuan said that it seemed like it was time to look for cheap and good cannon fodder. There was a black car nearby. Looking at the people around the black car, he said that he would have to muddy the waters. Holy Fire Guild Captain's office. Yada, reading a book, said that Jiang Yuan woke up. He said to wait a little and send someone to look after him. Ding Cheng asked if there was a need for this. He said that even if he defeated 2 monsters with hard work and luck, he is still only a rookie with a D rank. Yada told him to give what he says and continue to keep an eye on him. He said that he wants to know about his every move. Bowing, Ding Cheng said that although he does not know why he values him so much, from now on, everything regarding Jiang Yuan will be reported to him. The guy ran into the office and said that Jiang Yuan had just been kidnapped by the Dark Legions right at the gate. Yada, jumping up from his seat, exclaimed in shock. A black van stood next to the headquarters of the Dark Legion. Senior Zio said that he simply asked him to monitor the movements of the Holy Fire Guild. Pointing his finger at the main character, he asked why he brought him here. Looking around, Jiang Yuan said that their headquarters, frankly, is so-so and looks much worse than that of the Holy Fire. Senior Zio, grabbing the younger one by the collar, asked if he understood that they were now preparing for the Legion class dungeon and should not conflict with other guilds. Junior Zio asked what he could do, because they were just standing on the side of the road, and this guy suddenly came up and said something. The main character with a sly smile said that they wanted to catch the Windy Phoenix in order to use its restraint on the Fiery one and get the legendary weapon hidden in the Kishin Purgatory dungeon. Junior Zio said it was true. Senior Zio said that the legendary weapon is the main secret of their guild. He asked how he knew about this. Closing his eyes, Jiang Yuan said that it was the head of the Holy Fire Guild, Yada, who told him, and he also sent him to fight with them for the Windy Phoenix. He said that although the Dark Legion is a big guild, but due to their lack of S-rank awakened ones, it has become increasingly difficult for them to compete with other guilds recently. So they want to get their hands on legendary weapons that will allow them to fight with the masters. Senior Zio asked if he was stupid enough to come to them like this, knowing all this. Junior Zio with a grin told him to give them the Windy Phoenix, otherwise he would be in trouble. Closing his eyes, the protagonist asked with a smile if they thought they still had time to torture him. He said that the information about the legendary weapon and the beast was told to him by Captain Yada. He asked what they thought he would do if they found out that he was captured by them, whether he would allow them to get weapons, thereby jeopardizing his own status. The Zio brothers turned pale and Jiang Yuan asked if he might be willing to start an all-out war with them to eliminate the threat. Approaching them, he said that their only choice now was to cooperate with him and quickly take the legendary weapon before Yada came. Passing by them, he said, get strength to compete with him. Gritting his teeth, Senior Zio asked why he needed this. He looked at the protagonist's hand. The main character, hugging them both, said that they didn't need to know that and they just needed to remember that they at least had the same goal, to create problems for Yada. He asked Senior Zio with a smirk if he wanted the dark army he created to be completely destroyed. Kitsune said that her master is very handsome today and she likes it. Holy Fire Headquarters. Deliberative view. On the screen was the main character who said that he, Jiang Yuan, was loyal to the Holy Fire Guild, and in order to repay Captain Yada's kindness, he volunteered to join the Dark Legion as an undercover agent with the goal of capturing a legendary weapon for their guild. Yada was sitting at a table surrounded by people. Ding Cheng said that this is the recording that Jiang Yuan left in his room before he was kidnapped. Yada asked if this means that when Jiang Yuan encountered the Dark Legion, he accidentally learned that they were trying to capture the Windy Phoenix in order to obtain a legendary weapon. And to help learn about the dungeon, he risked his life and went straight to them. Closing his eyes, Ding Cheng lowered his head and said that judging by how eager the Dark Legion was to capture him, it was true. The guy said that he didn't think Jiang Yuan was like this, and it seemed like he really underestimated him. The other guy said that he understood that if he had told about this in advance, the captain would not have allowed him to sacrifice himself like that. Yada, slamming his hands on the table, ordered that all guild members be notified so that they prepare for war. He said that this weapon would directly affect the guild's power, and they couldn't miss this opportunity. He said that he personally, Yada, would never give up the life of any of the guild members. The guys listened to him intently, and Yada said that the people of the Dark Legion are cruel, and if Jiang Yuan becomes useless to them, they will no longer be able to save him. He said that, most likely, even now he is in incredible danger. Raising his hand, he ordered to immediately find the dungeon where he was sending the Dark Legion and they must rescue him immediately. Legion level Dungeon L9, Kishin Purgatory. The guys from the Dark Legion fought with magma monsters. The Zio brothers ran past the monsters and said that they need to move forward as quickly as possible. In the dungeon there was a van with bars on the back window. The main character, lying in the van, said that it was too hot in this dungeon. He asked if they could bring him some ice water. The guys irritably brought water, and Jiang Yuan said with an unpleasant expression that their key to quickly defeating the boss would now be burned alive. Looking at the explosion outside the window, he said that the Dark Legion is indeed a great guild, but they still cannot work properly. He thought that the enemies of the Legion level dungeon were not only much stronger than the usual ones of the same level, but their sheer size and number would cause even more trouble. He thought that with his current strength, he would not be able to reach the final boss alone. Senior Zio said that the cleansing of the lava golems has been completed. He ordered the medical team to go treat the wounded and leave a few people to guard Jiang Yuan while the attacking team moved on to the next node. The main character, lying on the Kitsune's lap, thought that if he presses like this, then very soon their strength and reserves will be completely depleted, and they will not even have time to go halfway before the hastily assembled Holy Fire Guild arrives. He told them to tell their boss to hurry up because he wanted to get home quickly and have a nice dinner. He thought that he would begin his performance when the conflict between both sides flared up, but for now he would simply watch the show with a calm soul. The guy said irritably that he thought too much of himself and he would hit him. The other guy shook his head, put his hand on his shoulder and said that they would deal with him after they cleared the dungeon. Think energy flashed. The guy fell to his knees. The guards in front of the protagonist's van fell to the ground. Jiang Yuan asked Jiang Ru what she was doing here. Jiang Ru, holding a spear in her hand, asked how he was doing. She smoothed her white hair with her hand. The main character thought that he had met her only once, in the dungeon with the worm, and since then he had not seen her again. As he got out of the van, he thought that if it weren't for her help then, he would have forgotten about her. When he came outside, he thought she thought he had actually been captured. Jiang Ru asked why he was standing. She asked about him being kidnapped and still not being able to escape. Looking at the guys lying on the ground, Jiang Yuan wondered why she beat the Dark Legion people and saved him. Turning pale, he thought that she had beaten the people of the Dark Legion. The Zio brothers turned towards him. Senior Zio said angrily that he dared to take his girlfriend with him to attack them. Junior Zio said that he told him that this guy was up to something. Rushing to attack, they asked how he dared to deceive them. Swinging her spear, Jiang Ru told the protagonist to follow her and she would lead him out. Covering her mouth with his hand, he laughed awkwardly and said that it was just a misunderstanding. He thought that he still needed this cannon fodder and he could not give up his strategy. Jiang Yuan asked how he could betray such a tough guild like the Dark Legion with just one girl. He asked them to trust in his sincerity and desire to cooperate with them. Jiang Ru, removing his hand, asked why he was collaborating with these people because they kidnapped him. The main character, smiling awkwardly, said that he would explain everything later. Stepping forward, he said that regarding the fight against the Holy Fire, they have absolutely the same interests. Looking at him, Jiang Ru wondered if he was fighting with Captain Yada. Burning with sinister energy, Jiang Yuan said that he was tired of living next to the enemy. A portal appeared nearby and he started saying something about Yada from the Holy Fire. He noticed Yada and his subordinates emerge from the portal. Putting his hand to his chest, the protagonist shouted that he was absolutely and unconditionally loyal to Captain Yada. He asked if they wanted him to betray the captain. Kitsune and Jiang Ru looked at him in amazement. Sweating nervously, Jiang Yuan thought that he had noticed him just in time and almost let it slip. The Zio brothers rushed to attack and asked about his decision to play tricks on them. Yada ran forward, grabbed the sword shrouded in blue energy, and ordered Jiang Yuan to be quickly rescued. He repelled the Zio brothers' attack by swinging his sword. Jiang Ru turned around and asked which side he was on. She said to quickly explain everything to her. She discovered that Jiang Yuan and Kitsune were no longer with her. Closing his eyes, the main character thought that the first part of the clash between two guilds had been completed, but in the wrong place and at the wrong time. Crossing his arms, he thought that if he couldn't lead both parties to where the boss was, he wouldn't be able to take advantage of the resulting chaos to take the Fire Phoenix. His title of fugitive was activated and his sense of presence was reduced. He thought that, fortunately, in this bustle, neither side would notice him, so it would not be difficult to leave unharmed. Jiang Ru, surrounded by opponents, called to him. Jiang Yuan frowned and thought that she was very problematic. Smirking, He thought that unlike Yada, he, as a demon king, never had the habit of easily sacrificing others. He told Kitsune to hold on tight. Leaping forward, he told her to allow him to use her power properly. The ground under his foot began to glow with a bright blue light. The skill module was activated and it said, Permafrost Field. Yada turned around, frowned and asked what it was. Jiangru opened her mouth in amazement. Looking at the main character, she said his name. The main character said that when such attention is attracted, the status of a fugitive immediately subsides. He said, since it was not possible to leave quietly. Stamping his foot on the ice, he said, an instant flash. Taking off with the Kitsune, Zhang Yuan said that they would put on a great show. He smiled widely and Kitsune's mouth fell open. Pointing her finger forward, she said that a very unpleasant smell was coming from there. Looking at the mountain shrouded in chains, the protagonist said that since she felt it, the Fire Phoenix was there. Purgatory Kishin is famous for its legendary weapon, the Fire Reaper. However, since this is a Legion-level dungeon, there is a powerful boss and countless monsters, so you need a large number of people to clear it. Thinking about his relationship with other players in his past life, the main character said that he didn't get along well with everyone, so he didn't have the opportunity to get into such a big dungeon. Smirking, he said that now he wants and can get both the boss and the weapon. Enveloped in purple energy, he jumped forward and said that all that was needed was to get the two guilds here to do all the work for him. Ding Cheng asked what Zhang Yuan was going to do. Yada said that the duration of the teleportation skill is very short, and if you are not careful, he may fall into the lava. It is too dangerous. Senior Zio, raising his spear, suggested that his brother use combo skills to bring him down, because they should not let him escape. Junior Zio pointed his finger forward and told him to look at the mountain. He asked if it was the boss. The red paw stepped on the stone. Flame Phoenix, Legion boss, Tier S, specializes in fire attacks of a wide range, destructive and extreme nature. Smiling widely, the main character said that it had arrived. He said that he needed Kitsune to continue attacking with ice attacks, which would instantly anger it. And even he, not a fan of quarrels, would definitely not put up with that. Smoke came out of the fiery phoenix's mouth. Many fireballs rushed forward above him. A red light was visible in the dark clouds. Many fireballs began to fall from the sky. The guys looked up in shock. Yada turned around and shouted that this was an intensified bombardment attack. He ordered everyone to take cover. The guys began to run away in panic, shouting that they were all going to die. Smirking, Zhang Yuan said that he had rested for too long and it was time to get down to business. A small windy phoenix appeared in his hand. A stream of flame enveloped the main character. Yada and the others stood on the ground in amazement, covering themselves with their hands. The Zio brothers asked in amazement, didn't those fire projectiles fall? Yada, standing in the magic barrier with Jiangru and Ding Cheng, asked about him blowing flames from feathers, being of different ranks. The windy phoenix, surrounded by a magical barrier, blocked the fireballs. Yada said that it was not surprising that the Dark Legion was so eager to obtain the windy phoenix. Rising to his feet, Ding Cheng said that he understood everything. Looking up in admiration, he said that Zhang Yuan had already foreseen the boss's approaching attack, so he jumped into the air to block the attack for everyone, despite the danger. The protagonist stood with the Kitsune on the back of the windy phoenix, and Ding Cheng said that such courage was admirable. Junior Zio told his brother that he saved their people too. Senior Zio asked what this all meant. The main character told the Holy Fire Guild and the Dark Legion that due to all this massacre, the boss awakened prematurely. Kitsune thought that he actually asked her to provoke it. The main character said that monsters from all over the dungeon are constantly flocking here to surround them. The guys said there were too many of them on all sides. Zhang Yuan said that once the wind sphere expires, everyone will have to face the attack of a huge number of monsters and the boss at the same time, and it will be incredible luck to escape. He said that of course, a strong person like Captain Yada would be able to lead the guild elite to break out of the siege. But then it was unknown how many weak players would be buried in this hell. Yada, raising his fist, told them not to be afraid, because he would not abandon any of them. The guy asked if they could all escape. Gritting his teeth, the protagonist said that as an E-rank weakling, he, Zhang Yuan, felt the same as everyone else, so he would not let this happen. The ice sword appeared above him and he said that he would fight to the death alone to hold off the boss and fight for everyone's chances. Standing on the phoenix, he told Jiangru to listen to him. Jiangru looked up with tears in her eyes. The main character said that he believes that there is no place for fighting and killing in dungeons. There should be not only personal interests and benefits between players, and weakness is not a reason to refuse opportunities and sacrifice oneself. Going towards the fiery phoenix, he said goodbye to them. Junior Zio asked what they should do since he actually went to the boss. He asked if they should retreat. Scratching his head, Senior Zio said that they couldn't let this newcomer protect their boys and save them. He asked if this became known, how would they be able to continue running the guild? Yada called out to them and they turned around. Extending his hand to them, he said that Zhang Yuan was a member of his guild, and he would not stand by and watch him die. The Zio brothers looked at each other, and he said that now they could only minimize their losses by working together to take over this dungeon. Standing under the red fiery sky, Yada and Junior Zio shook hands. Zhang Yuan said that for these guilds, their face is more important than legendary weapons, and he understands them. After petting the Windy Phoenix, he suggested using its attack to attract all the small monsters. Approaching the Fiery Phoenix, he said that it would provide him with a date with his wife. Upon landing, the main character said that everything went smoothly, and with the Windy Phoenix nearby, the boss would not attack them. Kitsune, blushing and pulling off her clothes, said that it was hot here and she was uncomfortable. Patting her on the head, Zhang Yuan with a smile told her to be patient for a while. They will just take the Windy Phoenix to the boss and that's it. Yada and the Zio brothers were fighting the monsters, and he said, given the favor of returning the Windy Phoenix, his attractive appearance, as well as the threat of attack from the two guilds, he had to convince her. He said that the Phoenix could already be considered his. She imagined him standing behind the crying Phoenix girl asking her that she didn't want the two strongest guilds to attack her and her little friend. Gritting her teeth, Kitsune said that the disgusting smell was coming from here. The main character said that she has a very strong aura, and it is worthy of a Legion-level boss. A huge fire phoenix surrounded by flames stood in front of him, and Zhang Yuan said that it really looked terrifying up close. Smiling, he introduced himself and said that he was Zhang Yuan, the savior of her dear flighty phoenix. The wind phoenix flapped its wings as it stood next to him. The fire phoenix asked them to leave and said that she did not want to cause pain. The main character said that it would be easier since she could talk. He asked about the pain. The fire phoenix rushed to attack. The wind phoenix covered them with a magical barrier that blocked the fire projectiles. The main character and Kitsune ran behind the wind phoenix. Frowning her brows, Kitsune took Zhang Yuan into her arms. Sitting on the ground, the main character asked what was happening, because he remembers that they are like yin and yang. Looking at the phoenixes fighting, he asked why they suddenly began to quarrel. The fire phoenix with her leg chain said that as a guardian, she has no control over herself and they need to leave. Using flaming feathers, she said that she did not want to fight. The wind phoenix quickly flew forward. The main character stood up, covering his face with his hand. He asked about the wind phoenix trying to break the chains. Squinting his eyes, Zhang Yuan spoke about uncontrollable aggression, the shackles that bind it, and the guardian. He looked at the chain that went into the lava lake. In the middle of the lava lake there was a piece of earth into which a sword was stuck. The main character said that this means that this chain leads to a legendary weapon. He said that this meant that she must guard this sword and not let anyone near it, so she attacked the wind phoenix. Looking at the windy phoenix, clinging to the chain with its beak, he said that his goal was to free her from slavery. The wind phoenix was thrown aside, and Zhang Yuan said that it was very sad, because before they could fly freely side by side, but now they are forced to fight, and this is a heavy burden. He said it was time to take matters into his own hands, implying that there can never be too many legendary weapons. He told Kitsune to help him and she covered the ground with ice. In front of them was an icy road leading to lava. After activating the title Fugitive, the protagonist said that he needed to take the sword before she noticed it. Turning around, the fire phoenix said that she couldn't let people come here. She opened her mouth and fiery energy began to gather in her mouth. Jumping up from the ice springboard, Zhang Yuan exclaimed that this was fun. Shrouded in blue energy, he said that since he was reborn as a novice, he had not participated in something like this for a long time. But now the feeling had returned to him. The system reported that the genuine love skill module was activated. With a wave of blue energy, he used the permafrost field, an instantaneous flash. Blue energy flashed with a bright flash behind him. He quickly approached the legendary weapon, holding out his hand. The fire phoenix next to him opened its huge mouth. Turning around, the main character called out to the wind phoenix. Phoenix shot a blast of blue energy at him. The flow of energy pushed the main character aside. He fell to the ground next to the sword. Several small stones fell into the lava. Zhang Yuan slowly raised his head. Taking the hilt of the sword in his hand, he grinned and said that the legendary weapon was finally his. The blade of the blade was shrouded in flames. He pulled the sword out of the ground, and the chains around it crumbled. The system reported the successful receipt of the legendary weapon Fire Reaper. The chains crumbled into fiery dust, and he raised his sword above his head. The dialogue box says, Guardian Beast Fire Phoenix transfers ownership to Zhang Yuan. The title Patron of Swords is obtained. Title, Patron of Swords. Relevant skills acquired. When using a sword, damage is increased by 15%, and the player becomes immune to disarming. Acquired the parry skill. Fire Reaper, one-handed weapon, level, legendary. Damage, B. Agility, A. Resilience, B. Special abilities, Fire Blade. Attacks deal additional flame damage. S. Fireproof, grants the wearer resistance to flames. Flame Slasher, attacks are immune to fire. Boiling Blood, absorbs 3% HP per second, increasing the wearer's speed and fire damage by 100%. 2 skills have been blocked. Looking at the sword, the main character said that this sword is very good, and even in a past life it would have been worthy of a place of honor in the collection of the Demon King. That is, him. Pushing off the ground, he jumped forward. He returned from the stone island to the ice springboard in one leap. He said that since the Fire Phoenix itself took the initiative and retreated after being released, it was able to obtain the legendary weapon without even killing the boss. The Fiery Phoenix fell to the ground. She thanked him for his help. Touching the blade of the sword, Zhang Yuan said that we must not forget the main purpose of going to this dungeon. Touching the face of the Fire Phoenix, he said that he was taking the S-tier boss for himself. The dialogue box says, Fire Phoenix, level S, adult, elemental fire type, rank, Legion. Increases all attributes by 10 times in your dungeon. Skills, Flaming Feathers. Feathers turn into rain of fire and attack over a wide area. Step Fire, burns out all the land it flies over. Nirvana, dies and is reborn in flames once a week. Snapping his fingers, the main character said that, as he thought, after taming, its rank changed to D. Just like his. A small fiery phoenix with red feathers landed on his finger. The birds circled happily above them, and Zhang Yuan asked why turning into a human only worked for Kitsune. He looked at the dialogue box that appeared. The dialogue box says, the level of genuine love has been increased by 3 levels. Reward, Real Care, you can see the mood and state of the wards. Chimera, allows you to activate the ability modules of 2 wards at the same time. The main character drew attention to one of the abilities. He thought that in the Kishin Purgatory dungeon, he had obtained legendary weapons, unlocked useful skills, and even defeated an S-tier monster, but all of this simply paled in the face of this ability. Reward for the 10th level of Genuine Love, Legion of the Demon King. The main character happily said that this was his main skill from his past life. Laughing, he said that now the humiliating title of a beginner is over, and although he is now at the 1st level, but if he repeats the path that he took in his previous life, he will again be able to become a Demon King, controlling countless monsters and keeping the entire world in fear. Kitsune looked at him blankly. The guys were running, saying that the boss must be there. As they climbed the slope, they said that they would kill him and take the legendary weapon for themselves. Seeing the main character and Kitsune, they asked where the boss was. They said this noob is ruining everything again and he's definitely looking for death. The guy said he was still alive, amazing. Another guy asked what he had in his hand. Seeing the blade in the hand of the protagonist, they exclaimed that this was the same legendary sword. Junior Zio asked what was the matter. The guy said that the boss was missing, into the legendary weapon in the hands of Zhang Yuan. Someone said that the monsters here are only so strong on the outside. Someone else said that it was no wonder that this newcomer dared to go straight to the boss, and he thought he was special. Kitsune, baring her teeth, said that they were surrounding. Senior Zio told the main character to give the weapon to them, and then no one would get hurt, and he would turn a blind eye to the fact that he went against the boss alone. Someone exclaimed that the captain was very generous. Yada said that the Dark Legion was going to take the sword from him. Putting his hand on the hilt of the sword, he said that since Zhang Yuan is a member, all the treasure he received partly belongs to them. Ding Cheng told the protagonist to give the weapon to them and the guild would value his contribution. Kitsune said with a hostile frown that there were too many people here. The Zio brothers told him to return the legendary sword and they would spare his life. Yada and the guild people told him to just come hand over the weapon and the Holy Fire Guild would protect him. Jiangru wondered how he could even get involved in something like this and whose side he was on. Zhang Yuan said that as expected, however, taking the legendary weapon was not even his main goal. He said that he initially planned to use it to provoke a conflict between the 2 guilds and simply escape. Smiling, he said that it seemed that there was no need for that now. Raising his head, he shouted that the sword now belonged to him. Yada's mouth opened in amazement. Senior Zio frowned. People asked if he was crazy. Ding Cheng asked if he wanted to take over the guild's loot now. Yada, frowning, asked him to think about it, because a legendary weapon is not something that a D-rank player can master, and he will only hurt himself that way. Senior Zio spat displeasedly and said that he was a simple noob, so if he wanted to die so badly, then he would be happy to help him. The guys with knives jumped into attack and said they would kill him. One of them opened his eyes in amazement when he saw yellow energy. A stream of fiery energy pushed them away, throwing them aside. The guy fell to the ground in front of the Zio brothers. Yada and Ding Cheng opened their mouths in amazement. The main character walked with his sword raised. The dialogue box says, Demon King's Legion activated. By connecting with the demon's spirit, you will be able to use all of its power for a short period of time, a maximum of 10 minutes, which you can distribute as you wish. Enveloped in red energy, Jiang Yuan said with a smile that now that his abilities had finally returned, he wanted to relive the time when he was considered the boss. A huge fire phoenix appeared in front of the crowd and they exclaimed that it was a Legion-class boss. The guy said in fear that he was now with this noob. Senior Zio grabbed him by the collar and said angrily that they were here to defeat him. Junior Zio ran to attack and told the others to cover him. The fire phoenix opened its mouth and used flaming feathers. Junior Zio ordered the first ranks to hold formation. Senior Zio, appearing next to him, told no one to lag behind, otherwise he would kill them himself. Approaching the boss, he will order to surround him and attack. The main character, watching the battle from behind, said that the battle turned out well. Smiling, he said that the Dark Legion still does not give up, but the S-level monster obeys him, and not even alone. A white paw stepped onto the ground, emitting cold air. The guys, looking at the cold fog under their feet, asked what it was. The guy exclaimed that his feet were frozen. A huge kitsune loomed over them, baring its teeth. The dialogue box says, Ice Kitsune, level S, under the effect of the Demon King's Legion skill, 100% combat power. Junior Zio gritted his teeth and said that this is Kitsune Jiang Yuan. But where does she get the power of S-Rank? Senior Zio, breaking the ice with his spear, ordered to speed up and continue attacking the fire phoenix. He told his brother to follow him to stop the fox. Junior Zio said to stop talking nonsense and they would just destroy him. The guy exclaimed that the enemy was regenerating. The fire phoenix was shrouded in a green aura. A wind phoenix flew over his head, shrouded in a green aura. Noticing that the wind phoenix was protecting the fire phoenix, they asked how to fight them. The silhouette of the main character was visible in the cloud of dust. Senior Zio cursed at Jiang Yuan angrily. He raised his spear. Yellow energy enveloped his spear and he said that no matter how strong his monster is, he is still a D-rank noob. Throwing his spear, he shouted that he would just kill him and be done with it. Shrouded in yellow energy, it approached the main character. He calmly turned his head. Activating the wind sphere skill, he surrounded himself with a magical barrier, and the spear, spinning in the air, bounced back. The guys said to attack because he is surrounded. They rushed to attack and said that they would kill him. As they approached the protagonist, they said that they would see how long his shield would last. Jiang Yuan activated the Chimera skill with a smile. A vortex of blue energy appeared in his palm. Using a permafrost field, he covered the guys in ice. Swinging his blade, he asked if this was the sword they needed. The dialogue box says, Skill, Boiling Blood, absorbs 3% of HP per second, increasing the wearer's speed and fire damage by 100%. Slashing with his blade in the air, he told them to try to take it away. A stream of flame rushed forward, consuming the attackers. Senior Zio, clenching his hand into a fist and gritting his teeth, asked if this was some kind of joke. Ding Cheng lowered his head and said that he was controlling 3 monsters at the same time, including 2 S-level monsters. Looking at the huge monsters surrounding Jiang Yuan, he said that they all had full combat power. The main character stood with a confident grin on his face, and Ding Cheng asked if it was still that rookie Jiang Yuan. The main character, looking at them, thought that the expressions on their faces were fear. He stepped forward. The guys in front of him were trembling, clenching their fists. Senior Zio ordered the Dark Legion to retreat. Looking at Jiangru, the protagonist read misunderstanding on her face. Looking at Yada, he read hostility on his face. Junior Zio shouted at everyone to run because he was a monster. Jiang Yuan read hatred on his face. Stepping forward, he clutched the sword in his hand and thought that he was very familiar with it. Smiling widely, he thought that he was very familiar with the facial expression that those who look at him, the Demon King, must have.